Welcome to Death, Lies, and Alibis. I'm your host, Christy, and this is the podcast that dives deep into the dark and eerie world of our local cold cases. Today, we're in Zanesville, a small, lovely city that's nestled in the heart of Ohio. It's bustling with tight-knit neighborhoods and friendly faces, and a sense of security that you'd expect from any small town. But beneath the idyllic surface lies a hidden darkness, a collection of unanswered questions that have lingered over the years. So grab your headphones and lock your doors, and be prepared to enter a world where the truth has invaded everyone. In Muskingum County, we like to think we know each other pretty well. It's the kind of place where folks wave from their porches, where the same families have lived on the same streets for generations. You can walk into the grocery store and see three people you went to school with. And if you sneeze in town, someone 10 miles away will probably say, "Bless you." It's comfortable, familiar, safe. Well, at least most of the time it feels that way. But small towns have layers. Underneath the Friday night lights and the church potlucks, there's stories that never make the paper. Stories that don't fade, no matter how much time passes. And some of them, well, they're the kind that change how a town sleeps at night. This story belongs to Darius Markham D.M. Ford Sr. He was a coach, a brother, and a father, and a fighter, a man who made a difference in the lives of almost everyone who crossed his path. He was strong and disciplined, the kind of guy who'd push you past your limits and make you thank him for it later. But on a quiet stretch of Tunis Road, surrounded by woods and danger, that same strength wasn't enough. More than 20 years later, his killer still hasn't been named in a court of criminal law. And in a place where everybody knows everybody, that needs to be changed. Before he was a case file or a headline, DM was a man this community admired, a man some quietly envied. DM was larger than life in every sense of the word. And when he did speak, his voice had weight, steady and confident, the kind that can calm a storm or start one. He was a coach and a mentor and a motivator, the kind of man who believed in people when they didn't believe in themselves. He taught martial arts, fitness, and football, but at the heart of it, he taught discipline. DM gave his time to kids who didn't have a father figure. He was that rare kind of leader who saw potential in everyone. But when someone shines that bright, they don't just inspire people, they can stir up jealousy, resentment, obsession. And in the months leading up to his murder, those emotions were swirling just beneath the surface. DM was the kind of man people respected, but he also was the kind of man who would make enemies without even trying. Because the confidence like his, it doesn't set easy with everyone. And that's where his story begins to shift. From admiration to tension. From whispers in the bleachers to something much darker. July 11th, 2001. It was one of those heavy midsummer days in Ohio, the kind where the air sticks to your skin and the world feels slower somehow. That morning started out like any other. DM had calls to make, people to check in with, plans for another busy day. Nobody could have guessed that by nightfall, the man who'd spent his entire life lifting others would be lying alone on a dirt road, fighting for his own. Tunis Road. If you're local, you know it. It's quiet and royal, tucked out of the way, the kind of place folks go out hunting or to clear their heads. It's not the kind of place you stumble onto by accident. Now, sometime that afternoon, on that quiet stretch of road, something went horribly, brutally wrong. Gunshots shattered the stillness, sharp cracks that echoed through the trees, breaking the kind of summer silence only the countryside knows. A small caliber weapon, investigators said it was likely a .25. He was shot in the back 3 times. A coward shot. The kind that comes when someone doesn't have the guts to face the person they're killing. But here's what breaks your heart. DM didn't die right away. Even after the bullets tore through him, even after his body gave out from the waist down, he refused to stop fighting. He clawed through the dirt, pulling with his arms, dragging himself inch by inch toward his car. 40 yards. 40 yards of pure strength, pure willpower, pure survival. And he almost made it. Almost. And then the silence. By the time deputies arrived, the world had already gone still again. The killer was gone, the weapon vanished, but the scene still spoke. There were no signs of robbery. There was no chaos, no struggle. Just a man ambushed. This wasn't random. It was deliberate and it was planned. This was a setup. Whoever did this wanted DM dead and wanted it done clean. The heat and the dust and the echo of those gunshots, that moment still lingers in the air out there, like a wound in the countryside that never healed from. Because when you live in a small town like this, a murder doesn't just take one life. It shatters so many others. And from that day forward, nothing in Muskingum County felt the same again. Not long after DM's murder, whispers started spreading through Zanesville like wildfire. Quiet at first, and then louder, stronger. People had their theories. People always have their theories. And in this case, they all seemed to circle around one name, and that's Stacey Coffey. Stacey wasn't just a familiar face. She was a name that carried weight and gossip. She and DM had been involved off and on in a relationship that was passionate as it was volatile. Now, that's public record, so it's not allegedly. Everyone knew it. Everyone had seen it. There were public fights, loud and messy and emotional. One of them happened right in the middle of Colonial Square Mall. She saw DM with another woman, lost her temper, and lashed out. Drinks were thrown, nails flying, a scene people still talk about decades later. DM held her down until she was calmed. He refused to press charges and just walked away. But the damage was done. That was just a few months before he was murdered. Now, Stacey told investigators she ended things after that, but the phone records tell a different story. Because the day DM was killed, July 11th, she paged him. He called her back within a minute. She said it was about an exercise class. Maybe it was, but maybe it wasn't. And then there was Toby Coffey. That is her husband. Everyone knew about the affair, including the husband. And in a small town like this, being the man who got cheated on, especially across racial lines, didn't just sting. It burns, and it can be humiliating. Toby was the quiet kind. He was steady, not the kind of man who sought attention. But allegedly, he had a temper, a deep, slow kind of anger, the kind that doesn't explode right away. It's the kind that simmers. And allegedly, Toby knew DM was dead before the word got out. Allegedly, Stacey told him. And what makes you wonder is, how did she know? Now, I spoke with someone who worked with Stacey, and that night of the murder, they said she showed up to work unannounced. She was upset, shut her office door, and then she left while saying a word to anybody. Now, investigators found fresh scratches on Stacey's arms and legs. She blamed that she had got him at work, but her boss disagreed. The coworker that I spoke with said they looked like briar marks, the kind you get when you walk through woods or from being in the country. But still, this case has no fingerprints, no DNA, and no weapons. Suspicion, but no proof. Now, her coworkers never forgot that night. And after that night, Toby stopped visiting his wife's job completely. You think that's a coincidence? Well, I don't believe in coincidences, because too many coincidences start to feel like patterns. Investigators searched the coffee house 6 days later. Now, this case was a case that kept slipping through their hands. The DNA, the fingerprints, the blood, but none of it matched the names everyone was whispering. There was no weapon, like we said, no smoking gun. And that's what haunted this case ever since. The evidence says one thing, and the behavior says another. And somewhere in between the two, well, the truth sits buried, waiting for someone brave enough to dig it up. Because the thing about small towns, well, secrets don't stay buried forever. They just wait for the right ears to listen. So, when the criminal case hit the wall, DM Ford's sister did what families do when justice stalls. She refused to let it end there. And in 2002, she filed a civil wrongful death lawsuit against Stacey Coffey. She was claiming DM's murder was racially motivated and that Stacey knew more than she's ever admitted. It was a bold move, one that turned whispers into headlines. But before the case could gain ground, Stacey did what she allegedly always did under pressure. She backed away. She filed for bankruptcy, moved to Florida, and let the delays pile up. Years passed before she was finally ordered to testify. And when she did, she said nothing. She pled the fifth to where she was on July 11th. She pled the fifth to whether she had seen DM that day. The fifth to whether she'd been near the scene. She refused to answer almost every question, silence echoing louder than the truth. Eventually, though, the jury ruled there wasn't enough evidence, no civil judgment, and there's still no criminal charges. So the courtroom went quiet, and the case turned cold again. But Stacey's story didn't fade because years later, her name reappeared. But not here in Ohio, but in Florida, where she was arrested on robbery and gun charges. Now, to DM's family, that spoke volumes. Proof that her anger and recklessness weren't rumors, but patterns. And even though the court said there wasn't enough to hold her accountable, her name will always be tied to that stretch of Tunis Road and to the man who never made it home. To really understand who DM Ford was, now not just as a victim, but as a man, you have to hear from his son. Now, when I spoke with Darius Jr., the weight of his father's memory was right there in his voice. He carries it like a torch, bright, heavy, and impossible to set down. He talked about the simple things, like road trips to football games, late night talks, martial arts lessons in the backyard. He said his dad didn't just teach him how to fight, he taught him how to stand tall, how to lead, and how to show up. He remembered the hunting trips, the laughter, and the way his dad could walk into a room and light it up with a booming voice and a confident grin.
My dad made people better just by being around.
Then his tone shifted. He said the hardest part isn't the waiting.
It's the silence, the years of not knowing, the feeling that nothing ever moves forward.
And then he said something that, well, it stopped me cold.
My dad was the kindest, most straightforward man. He was a human being who deserves justice. No one deserves to live with these questions. It's torture.
That's what his family has carried for more than 20 years. A kind of pain that doesn't fade. It just changes shape. And yet, even with that weight, there's strength in Darius Jr.'s voice. The same fire his father had. He's still standing, still fighting, still saying his dad's name, loud enough for the world to hear. So here we are, more than 2 decades later, and the silence around DM Ford's murder is still deafening. We've heard the rumors, and we'll see the headlines in our Facebook group along with some court records. So if you're not already a member, go over and join and be a part of our community. But the truth here, in this case, well, it's buried somewhere between loyalty, fear, and time. And maybe that's what this is really about, breaking the silence. Because silence is the killer's best friend. If you've worked with Stacey or Toby Coffey, or if you live near Tunis Road that July, or if you've carried a secret all these years, it's not too late to speak up. Call the Muskingum County Sheriff's Office, because DM Ford wasn't just a headline. He was a father, a coach, and a mentor, and a man who made people better just by believing in them. We owe him more than silence. So share his story, talk about it, keep the pressure alive, because one voice, one memory, one truth that finally gets spoken out loud, that could be the thing that cracks this case wide open. I have all the hope and faith in that. This is for DM and for his family and for every life he touched. Now, we keep shining a light on this case until we see justice. Everybody mentioned in this episode is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Death, Lies, and Alibis is for entertainment and educational purposes only. I'm not a professional. I encourage you to do your own research and form your own opinions. And that's it, folks. That's it for this episode of Death, Lies, and Alibis. We hope that by shining a light on these local crimes, we have sparked something within you, our listeners. Because the truth is, solving these cases, it's going to take more than just our words. It's going to require the dedication and collected efforts of the entire community. Now, don't forget to hit the follow button on the podcast so you'll never miss an episode. And to learn more about how to get your case featured on the show, or to get instant access to case files and reports, plus documents and many free resources, go to our Facebook group, Death, Lies, and Alibis, and join today, or email us at deathliesalibis@gmail.com. And as always, be safe, stay alert, and never stop seeking justice.